The first time Emily Bennett walked into the startup office in downtown Austin, she carried nothing but a second-hand laptop, a binder full of scribbled ideas, and a heart full of dreams. It was the summer of 2014, and she was only 26. What she lacked in connections, she made up for in grit. Emily didn't have a business degree. She had grown up in a small town in Arkansas, raised by her mother and grandmother, both waitresses who taught her how to stretch every dollar and never trust promises without proof. She moved to Texas chasing the spark of an idea, a data platform that could help small communities manage resources more efficiently. Not flashy, but vital. She called it Root AI. It was meant to bring technology to the people who needed it most, not to corporations, but to neighborhoods, schools, shelters. In that cramped office, she met Josh Miller and Vanessa Price. They were smart, ambitious, and just like her, hungry to build something meaningful. Josh had a background in software, and Vanessa came from marketing. The three of them clicked fast. They pulled long nights, ate cold pizza, and pitched investors who barely looked up from their phones. Months turned into years. Emily was the heart of the operation. She built the tech, met with communities, and trained staff. Josh and Vanessa helped scale the business, and together they turned Root AI into something real. By 2020, they had 12 employees, a modest office in East Austin, and enough clients to make payroll without panic. That year, a private equity firm came knocking. They saw potential in Root AI, but they wanted structure. They offered investment on one condition. Emily, the technical founder, would have to step back. Her role would shift to advisor. Josh and Vanessa would take operational control. It was framed as a promotion, but Emily felt something crack inside her. They promised it would be temporary. She'd still be a major shareholder, they said. Her vision would guide the future, they said. She signed the papers reluctantly. Buried in the contract was a clause Josh had insisted on back when they first registered the company, a safety net. If she ever felt forced out, she could reclaim her shares and buy back the company for a symbolic $1. At the time, it felt like a silly gesture of trust, but they had all agreed. In 2021, everything changed. Emily was told her advisor position was being phased out. The company was going in a new direction. No room for sentimentality. Her access to the system was revoked. Her name was removed from the website. Her keycard stopped working overnight. She was stunned. No phone call, no goodbye, just gone. For weeks, she stayed in her apartment, blinds shut, phone off. Her parents begged her to come home. Her friends didn't know what to say. She felt like she had lost not just a job, but a part of her identity. All those years, all that sacrifice, erased. One day, while packing up old files, she found the original contract. It had coffee stains and worn edges. But the clause was still there, clear as day. She stared at it for hours. Was it still valid? Could she really use it? She called Brooke, an old college friend who had become a lawyer in Houston. Brooke read the clause twice and said, "Emily, they screwed up. This is enforceable." Hope sparked. Not vengeance, but justice. She didn't want to destroy Josh and Vanessa. She just wanted back what she built. She wanted her name, her purpose, her voice. That night, she reopened her laptop and started writing everything from the beginning. Not code, her story. Every meeting, every broken promise, every email. She wasn't sure what she would do with it yet, but she knew she wasn't done. Emily Bennett was still standing. Emily didn't rush. She spent weeks gathering every document, email thread, and draft that proved her involvement from the very first day. She wasn't preparing for revenge. She was preparing for clarity. With Brooke guiding her through the legal landscape, they filed a formal inquiry to activate the old clause from the original company agreement. At first, there was silence. Then came the denial. Josh sent her a short email. That clause was symbolic. It's not enforceable anymore. But Brooke wasn't just a friend. She was sharp, respected, and relentless. Within days, she responded with a legal notice backed by decades of corporate precedent. Emily had a real case. More than that, she had truth on her side. Word began to spread in certain circles. Former colleagues started reaching out, quietly at first. One by one, they shared stories of how things had shifted after Emily left. Meetings had turned colder, projects were cut. The heart had gone missing. One email came from Rachel, a developer who had worked under Emily for 3 years. "I stayed because of you," she wrote. "When you were pushed out, I knew something was wrong. I'm sorry I didn't speak up." Emily replied with kindness. She wasn't angry. She was just heartbroken. Another message came from David, an intern from 2 years earlier. "You once told me, always build with purpose." That stuck with me. "If there's any way I can help you rebuild, I'm in." These messages weren't just comforting. They reminded Emily of who she had been, and still was. She wasn't just reclaiming a company. She was reclaiming herself. As the case moved forward, things got more intense. Josh and Vanessa hired aggressive attorneys who claimed Emily had abandoned her role. They argued that the clause had expired. But Brooke stood firm, and more importantly, so did the paperwork. The dates, the signatures, the board notes, everything supported Emily's side. Still, doubt crept in. What if she won? And it didn't feel like victory. What if the company had already lost its soul? One evening, she met with Rachel and David at a coffee shop near the UT Austin campus. Over steaming mugs and nervous laughter, Rachel said, "Maybe it's not about taking Root AI back. Maybe it's about starting something new, but this time without compromise." Emily sat with those words. Could she let go of Root AI, the name, the brand, but keep the spirit? Could she build again, not from memory, but from truth? That night, she wrote a name in her notebook. Second Root. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't polished, but it meant something. Still, the legal case had to finish. She couldn't ignore what Josh and Vanessa had done, not just to her, but to everyone who had believed in the mission. Weeks later, they received a court date. It wouldn't be a long trial. The facts were clear, but the emotional weight was enormous. Emily didn't sleep much the night before. She lay on her couch, watching the ceiling fan spin. She thought about her mother, her grandma, the long nights writing code under a flickering desk lamp. At dawn, she got up, made a pot of coffee, and read through her old journal entries from the early days. One, dated October 2nd, 2014, read, "I don't know if this will work, but I do know that I'd rather fail doing something that matters than succeed faking it." She smiled. That girl, scared but determined, was still inside her. At court, Emily sat quietly while the attorneys debated contracts and clauses. Josh avoided eye contact. Vanessa didn't speak. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, Emily stood up and said simply, "I didn't come here to fight. I came to protect what we built, and the people who gave it meaning." Silence filled the room. The judge nodded. "Thank you, Ms. Bennett. We'll reconvene for the final ruling next week." Outside the courthouse, Rachel hugged her. David clapped her on the shoulder. "You did it," he said. "Not yet," Emily replied. "But for the first time, I'm proud of how far we've come." They walked down the courthouse steps together, not knowing what the next week would bring, but certain of one thing. Emily wasn't the same person they had tried to erase. She was stronger, clearer, and no longer alone. The courthouse was quiet when Emily returned the following week. Brooke walked beside her, carrying a folder packed with every detail of the case. Emily didn't speak much. She had barely slept in days. Her stomach twisted with a blend of hope and fear. Inside the courtroom, Josh and Vanessa sat across the aisle. Vanessa stared straight ahead while Josh kept fidgeting with his pen. No smiles, no nods, only distance. The judge entered, his expression unreadable. Papers shuffled. The room seemed to shrink. Then came the words Emily had waited months to hear. "The clause in question is legally binding. The company must honor the original agreement." A silence swept through the courtroom. Emily didn't move. It took a second for the meaning to land. She had won. Technically, the court gave her the right to buy back Root AI for one symbolic dollar. But what she truly gained was something far deeper: validation, recognition, justice. Brooke squeezed her hand, whispering, "You did it, Em." Josh's lawyer asked for time to appeal, but the judge denied it. The contract had been clear. They had signed it willingly. There was no ambiguity. Outside, the Texas sun was blinding. Reporters had caught wind of the story, and a few were waiting at the steps. Emily gave a brief statement. "This isn't just about a company. It's about never letting anyone erase your contribution. I hope this reminds others to protect their worth, even when no one's watching." The news spread quickly. Tech blogs picked up the headline: "Startup founder wins back company after secret clause discovered." Social media buzzed. Some called her a genius. Others questioned the legal maneuver. But to those who knew her journey, it wasn't about cleverness. It was about heart. Still, Emily felt hollow. Back at the Root AI office, the atmosphere was tense. She visited only once, accompanied by Brooke and a court representative. The team looked shocked. Some avoided her gaze. Others whispered. The place felt foreign, stripped of the warmth it once held. Her old desk had been cleared. Her nameplate was gone. Even the framed photo of her and Rachel at their first launch event had been removed. Rachel met her by the elevator. "They made everyone believe you left on your own," she said quietly. "They told us you gave up." Emily nodded. "That's over now." But it didn't feel like a homecoming. It felt like walking through the ashes of something she had loved. Over the next week, Emily had full access to Root AI again. But instead of celebration, she found disorganization, dropped contracts, and a team burned out from months of confusion. The mission was gone. The energy had died. She stayed late each night, reading files, checking code. Alone in the conference room, surrounded by silence, she realized Root AI wasn't hers anymore. Not in spirit. She could try to revive it, hire new people, rebuild. But would it ever be the same? One evening, she stood in front of the large glass window that overlooked downtown Austin. Lights blinked across the skyline. Below, people moved through their lives, unaware of the battles fought in boardrooms and broken dreams. She whispered to herself, "I came all this way to get it back, but maybe it's time to let go." The next morning, she made a decision that surprised everyone. She called a meeting. The whole team showed up, tense and uncertain. "I know this has been confusing," she began, "and I know many of you don't know me the way you knew Josh and Vanessa, but I was there when this started. I built the foundation, and I never wanted any of this to become a fight." She paused. Deep breath. "That's why I'm stepping down. Not out of defeat, but because I believe in beginnings, not battles. I'm starting something new, something that remembers where we came from, but looks ahead." The room was silent. Then Rachel stood up and said, "Wherever you go, I'm going with you." Others nodded, quiet, unsure, but curious. Emily handed over control to the remaining board members as part of a negotiated exit. She kept her share, but gave up operational control. It wasn't about ownership anymore. That night, she returned to her small apartment. No fanfare, no headlines, just peace. She opened her laptop and pulled up a blank document, the title, Second Root. She smiled. This time, there would be no compromises. 3 months later, the first lines of code for Second Root were already in place. Emily's tiny apartment had become a hub of creation again. Cables on the floor, whiteboards filled with ideas, late-night ramen bowls stacked in the sink. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt alive. Rachel had become her right hand. David joined too, turning down a comfortable job offer to help build something with meaning. Others followed, not because of promises, but because of trust. They didn't have a big office, fancy funding, or a slick pitch, but they had something rare: clarity of purpose. This time, everything would be transparent. Everyone would be seen. Every voice would matter. The vision was simple. Second Root wasn't just a platform. It was a space where developers, designers, and thinkers could co-create tools that helped real people, not just investors. No hidden agendas, no power plays. The first prototype was clunky, but full of heart. They launched a beta version to a small group of users, mostly through word of mouth. Feedback poured in, some good, some harsh, all valuable. One message stood out. It read, "I used to work under someone who inspired me every day. That person disappeared, and I thought she was lost forever. Today, I found her again. In your code." Emily stared at the message for a long time. She didn't know who wrote it, but it didn't matter. It reminded her that the fire inside her hadn't been extinguished, only buried for a while. The local newspaper picked up their story under the headline, "From Betrayal to Breakthrough, a Founder's Second Act." Emily agreed to a radio interview where the host asked, "What would you tell someone who feels erased?" She paused before answering, "You're not erased. You're just not in the chapter they wanted to write. But you get to write your own." Meanwhile, Root AI had changed. After Emily's exit, investors pulled back. Clients moved on. Without the soul that once guided it, the company drifted. Josh left quietly. Vanessa vanished from public view. The startup that once aimed to change the world became a cautionary tale in business seminars. But Emily didn't celebrate their downfall. She felt nothing. Her focus was forward. Every day brought new challenges, bugs to fix, designs to rethink, late nights full of doubt. But there was joy in the struggle. Not the joy of success, but of purpose. One Friday evening, the team gathered at Rachel's apartment. They toasted with cheap, sparkling cider. David raised his glass and said, "To second chances, and people brave enough to take them." Laughter filled the room. Emily looked around at the faces glowing in the candlelight. These weren't employees, they were companions, builders of something that couldn't be bought or stolen. Later that night, alone on the balcony, she pulled out her old journal again. A new entry filled the page. Maybe the point was never to win the old battle. Maybe it was to find the courage to walk away and build something better. Weeks passed, then months. Second Root grew slowly but steadily. Partnerships formed. Clients signed up. But Emily never let the pace override the purpose. She refused to trade clarity for speed. One morning, she received a letter, handwritten, no return address. It said, "I was in that courtroom. You didn't see me, but I watched you stand tall when you could have crumbled. Thank you for reminding us that integrity still matters." She tucked the letter in her drawer. She never found out who sent it. But in her heart, she knew. Her story had touched more people than she'd ever imagined. In the end, Emily didn't become rich overnight. She didn't seek revenge. She didn't build the next tech empire. What she built was far more powerful. A life of meaning. And in doing so, she reminded thousands, maybe even millions, that starting over isn't a failure. It's an act of courage.